Hello everyone, and thanks for watching. Today I'm going to talk about drugs. If you've watched my earlier videos, you'll know that I'm in favor of legalizing marijuana, and I happen to be lucky enough to live in Oregon where we have recreational pot, but this isn't the case for most of the country still. And even if it were legal in all 50 states, it's still federally illegal, which puts users in some degree of risk. But on August 1st, a senator from New Jersey proposed a bill that would remove marijuana from its Class 1 scheduling under the Controlled Substances Act, making it federally legal to possess marijuana. This would be a huge blow to the failed war on drugs that has done practically nothing to prevent drug use and addiction, and has instead served to only incarcerate those who have an addiction, or in the case of pot, people who just want to have fun or relax or whatever. The bill, known as the Marijuana Justice Act, was proposed by Cory Booker, who said it is to rectify the unjust targeting of African Americans and low-income communities that have been most affected by marijuana arrests. Which I don't see much of a problem with. I mean, I have to wonder, are there high-income black communities? And if so, do they have the same drug arrests as low-income neighborhoods? Or would it have been just as accurate to simply say low-income communities? Regardless, it doesn't really matter, because the simple fact is, no one should be arrested for simply carrying a substance they plan to use on themselves, especially one like marijuana that has 0 cases of overdose ever. And besides, the motives of a senator or their willingness to pander doesn't really change whether a bill is a good idea or not. And I think this one is a good idea that will help a lot of people and prevent many more from having their lives destroyed over something as stupid as smoking a little pot, while alcohol and tobacco are 100% A-OK. For me personally, it doesn't really matter if 99% of the arrests are black people or 99% of the arrests are white people, because regardless, they are people whose lives are ruined and families are torn apart for something that shouldn't be a crime to begin with, in my opinion. Which is why I also like that the bill will, according to Newsweek, along with declassifying pot and making the plant legal, Booker's bill will retroactively expunge convictions for marijuana use and possession, as well as give those currently serving time on cannabis charges the chance to appeal to the court and have their sentences reduced or eliminated. But sadly, this bill probably won't pass. But even if it had, it would only be a small win against the failed war on drugs. Still, it would have been a big victory for pot smokers all across the nation, and it would be a move in the right direction, in my opinion. But this wasn't the only attack on the ancient and barbaric drug laws that we have in this country. In my home state of Oregon, a new bill was proposed, and it's another possible step in the right direction. The bill aims to reduce the classification of first-time drug offenses from a felony to a misdemeanor in an attempt to reduce prison overcrowding and to help addicts get help rather than being sentenced to prison, where they'll most likely have access to drugs anyway. The bill also aims to reduce profiling by collecting data about demographics such as age, race, and gender that'll be used to find inequalities with police procedures. This part, I'm a little more uncertain of. On the one hand, I would love for such inequalities to be eliminated. Everyone needs equal protection under the law. But on the other, I worry that this data will lead people to false conclusions. For instance, if there are a disproportionate number of people committing crimes, then it won't be the police profiling causing the difference, but actual differences in crime rates. Or if, say, white people commit as many robberies as any other race but are arrested less often, we shouldn't seek to arrest less black people or Hispanic robbers, but rather crack down on all those robbers who aren't getting caught. If, however, the difference is due to profiling, then it would be good to know, so we could do something about it. But if all we have is police data, then we don't know who else is committing the crimes and not getting caught, so I'm not sure that the data could ever tell us enough to make an informed decision on the matter. But for now, it's just data collection, so until they actually decide what to do with the data, I don't really know how it'll turn out. But getting back to the matter of drugs and race, I don't know if there's a difference between different races and drug use. Like, I don't know if black people do more or deal more drugs than white people. If I had to guess, I would say the overall amount is greater for white people because there's more white people in the United States than any other racial group. If, however, we took it as a percentage of the population, then, well, I still have no idea. But I would guess it's probably pretty even once we account for socioeconomic factors. But that's just my guess. However, I found an article from the Washington Post from like 3 years ago that claims that white people are more likely to sell drugs, but black people are more likely to get arrested for nonviolent drug crimes, which may lead some to assume it's because of racial profiling. But the truth is far more simple. And that is that white people are more likely to sell indoors and to friends and family, whereas black people are more likely to sell outside, which makes them more likely to get picked up by the police. Which probably doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of poor white people selling drugs outside, but rather that there are very few black people with the ability to sell indoors to a network of wealthy drug users. In other words, there are plenty of poor drug dealers of all races, but there are very few rich people by comparison, and most of those rich people happen to be white, so there are very few upper-class drug dealers in the US that aren't white. Regardless of all that, the fact is that drugs can be very harmful, and so they should be regulated in some way. I think the best approach, though, is to legalize and tax. This won't make it easier for children to get a hold of because the black market doesn't really have age restrictions, but dispensaries can. So while it may be easier for me as an adult to get my hands on drugs, it won't be easier for minors, although it may not be harder either unless the black market is weakened or destroyed. But legalizing and taxing will likely have some impact on that, because if people are buying legally, it'll take away revenue from the cartels and big-time drug dealers, which I think are a real problem. We should still seek to stop large-scale manufacturing and distribution of these substances by anyone who doesn't follow the proper channels. This will also help to assure quality and purity, and to at least some degree safety. If I buy cocaine, I know that it's pure and not mixed with laxative or some other far more dangerous substance. But making it easier for me to use cocaine and heroin doesn't actually make me more likely to use them. Because getting my hands on them wouldn't be all that difficult now, and even though I suddenly don't have to worry about getting arrested for possession, that's not what's stopping me from doing those drugs now. The thing that's actually stopping me is fear of addiction. I don't want to ruin my life from something so stupid and expensive, and I don't want to be consumed by such a desire and feel the constant need to always have more. So I avoid them, and I suspect many people feel the same way. But still, some will say that these drugs must be illegal because they ruin lives. According to Washington Post, State Senator Betsy Johnson said, "The proponents of this bill mistakenly believe that drug sentences damage people's lives, but it's the drugs that ruin people's lives," she said. "I would like to end the odious practices of racial profiling, but I will not be associated with a bill that decriminalizes hard drugs." Okay, but if the drugs ruin lives, why make them a crime? And not try and help the addicts? Gambling all my money away would ruin my life, but it shouldn't be illegal, unless I also have children that are being neglected in the process, but otherwise, it just affects me. If I go to Vegas and spend all my money, what's wrong with that? Who else is that affecting other than me and my immediate family? So, if I were a gambling addict, then I might need help getting over my addiction, but locking me up wouldn't do anything to improve society. So if we legalize and tax, we can prevent prison crowding from nonviolent offenders while cutting off the lifeblood of cartels and other drug enterprises, while collecting tax money that can be used to help communities and support programs such as drug prevention and rehabilitation. Rather than locking up addicts, we can help people get the assistance they need to free themselves of their addiction. But of course, all this seems very unlikely while we have Jeff Sessions leading the Department of Justice. Although, it seems that he may have moved on to other topics like affirmative action, but I don't have time for that now, so I might cover that in a later video. Thanks for watching. Please rate this video and leave a comment to let me know what you think. If you like my work, you can subscribe to my channel, and you can also follow me on social media. Thanks for watching, and remember to never stop questioning.